The year is 1968. Japan is still in very turbulent times. The country suffered multiple uprisings throughout the year due to different conflicts, both internally and in other nations. Despite the economic miracle that they lived in the first 2 decades after the war, Japan still felt the effects of the war, and multiple stories were made talking about it. But the first day of that year, something important came out. A story that would bring hope to the population of Japan. From the hands of illustrator Tetsuba Chiba, known for its work in Harisu no Kase, in conjunction with Asaki Takamori, this manga would came out. Takamori, writer of stories such as Tiger Mask and Akakichi no 11, which is where this famous meme came from, would eventually be known as the godfather of Spokon, thanks to his work in Ashita no Yo.
Hey, 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 blues. まるでジャンキーなブルース。お前のシャウトは人の胸をゆする。
Hello there. I have been in a quest in order to watch every single anime in the top 150 of my anime list. And after a lot of time, I finally decided to watch Ashita no Yo. I always had a thing to go and watch Ashita no Yo, but it was a show that was really difficult to get into. Not only because it's one of the oldest animes in the top of my anime list, which is already a very concerning thing, but might be the oldest anime that is very well known outside of Astro Boy, which is something very difficult to evaluate. Not only that, but if we go through the manga, it's even worse. As I already established in the intro, it's something that came out in 1968, which means that it has over 50 years of existence. But because both I had to watch it because of this idea and I was actually somewhat wanting to watch it, I decided to give it a go right now that I had enough time to watch a show like this. This show was always interesting to me because it was usually the key point for every anime elitist to start watching animes that are very old. It's like, this is the point in which you should watch this icon. So I always was kinda intrigued by it, even if early on was like, what is this? Of course, it was always intriguing because the show that had the most recent season coming out in 1980 is always gonna feel very weird. Yet, here we are. After fully finishing the show, I want to talk about it, or mainly of some factors of it. Now, I don't want to make this a full-on review, mainly because of the way that I watched the show. You see, I started watching the show, the first half of it, from manga, because I wanted to watch the anime of specifically Ashita no Yo 2. I thought it was gonna be the best way to both read the manga, that is allegedly the superior way to do it, but also to be able to watch the anime that is in my anime list, and I have to watch it. So after finishing fully the anime and being very close to finishing the manga as well, I am gonna talk about it. More specifically, I'm gonna go and talk about why I think that this turned out to be the father of all Spokons. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about the reasons as to why I believe that this show managed to become one of the, if not the most iconic anime in the 60s and 70s, not called Astro Boy. And also, I'm gonna talk about the 3 factors as to why I believe that this is one of the, if not the greatest Spokon of all time. As I'm saying, I'm not gonna make a full-on review because I don't think that would be fair to neither the anime nor the manga, because I have not seen fully neither of them. But I'm gonna give a couple of my opinions, mainly for the anime. You see, the anime has something that it has an issue with. The second season of the anime came out in 1980, and it shows a lot. What do you mean by it shows? Well, I already made a video about how Legend of the Galactic Heroes looked really old, and Legend of the Galactic Heroes is a full decade more recent than Ashita no Yo. So you can imagine what I'm referring to right now. Yeah, the way in which Ashita no Yo looks in the anime is very rough at times. I'm not saying that it's a bad animation. I kinda enjoyed it, Yet I can truly understand that even if you go and watch it through the lenses of it being a really old animation, it's not particularly great. It has a lot of flaws, and I can totally comprehend it, and that's why I'm giving a warning for people that want to watch it. You are gonna watch an anime from 1980. And that shows. And that is only with the second season. If instead of doing what I did, which was reading the first half in manga, you watch it in anime, is way older. Because the first season came out in 1973, almost a full decade prior to the second season, and almost 2 full decades before the already mentioned Light of the Galactic Heroes that I already established that looked very old. It is a tough watch if you are not prepared for it. There's also the thing of the soundtrack, in which sometimes feels very repetitive. Like, I'm not saying that you should not reuse some of the same soundtrack, because obviously that's how it works. But when you listen to the same 3 or 4 songs, like every single chapter 3 different times for 50 episodes, it feels repetitive. As I'm saying, it's not something that I'm fully against, and the tracks that they had were kinda really good. But it's still something to take into consideration. But now, going for the actual important things, which I think that is the story of the show. And the first thing that I'm gonna talk about is what I think that is one of the strongest points in this show, and one of the main reasons to why it's succeeded, which is the villains. The villains of this show are really good, but because of the first reason, that is that they're actually not villains. You see, something very iconic for most Pokémon in current day is that there's no villains. There is antagonists. There are main rivals that oppose the protagonist simply because both of them want the same goal. That doesn't mean that they're evil. And that shows in this story. A story that came out in the 60s understood that perfectly. This is not a story of, oh, the protagonist is fighting evil through boxing. That is not what this story is all about. This is a story of one boxer fighting another boxer and trying to achieve the win, something that is extremely normal and what usually sports are all about. Not about being, oh, I'm better than you, but rather just winning. And I can talk about almost every single villain, but I want to talk about the 3 main villains of the story, which I think that are the ones that actually enhance the whole experience and are one of the, if not the key reasons to why this show managed to succeed so much. The first one obviously is Toru Rikishi. The first and main rival for the first half of the entire show. It appears for the first time in the jail, once Yabuki Joe appears there, which is something important that we're gonna talk about later on. But mainly, this character appears for the first time in said jail, and it becomes the main target for Joe throughout every single part of the first season, or the first half of the manga. Rikishi Toru is a great way to portray him compared to Joe. Joe is a very problematic kid that, as I already stated, gets put in jail because of that. While Toru is not actually like that. The first time that we see Toru, we see him as basically the perfect cellmate. He is someone that doesn't cause any trouble, that he is respectful with others and respectful with the police, he never tries anything weird, so he is very well respected. We know that he is there because something that he did, but it's obvious that he already learned his lesson. He is the perfect first rival for Yabuki because he is what Yabuki will eventually become, or what he should eventually become. Toru is very obvious that used to be very similar to Joe prior to the story, but not anymore. He is now someone to take into consideration as a very good human being, and that is portrayed in every single battle. Rikishi is not only just a regular cellmate, but he was also a former boxer, that once he goes out of jail, he wants to go back to become said boxer and try to become a champion. He is extremely important in the first half because he is the goal of Yabuki Joe. He is one of the main reasons to why Joe learns that boxing is something actually really good. He is the main reason as to why Joe stopped being such a horrible human being early on. He is the reason as to why Joe actually wants to become a professional, and he is the main target for the first championship of Jabuki Joe. In the first half of the show, we see how Jabuki Joe goes from being a very pragmatic guy to actually being a well-respectable human being, even if he still has some inconsistencies in that regard. Of course, he was an extremely problematic guy. He's not gonna turn into a saint overnight, but he becomes a much better version of himself, and that is thanks in part and greatly due to Toru Rikishi. Joe goes and battles multiple different opponents in the ring once he goes out of jail, but always the main target is Rikishi. Rikishi showcases the path of what I think is the message of the first half: perseverance and decisiveness. Rikishi is someone that in story goes through an insane path in order to be able to face Joe. Rikishi is both taller and heavier than Joe, something that would damage him if they wanted to face each other. And he decides to go back to the weight of Joe just to fight with him. And that is not an easy task at all. This is clearly one of the first times in anime history that a secondary character is given a primary role in an arc, and they show it every single moment of its training. How he has to go through an insane period of fasting to the point of borderline starving, just to the point of reaching bantamweight, which is the weight in which Jabuki is. That decisiveness is what will mark Jabuki for the following arcs in which Toru is no longer gonna be there for a very important reason. That is that Jabuki accidentally killed him, which is the path for the next villain, Carlos Rivera. If the first half talks about the decisiveness of a character and is told throughout the lenses of Toru Rikishi, then the second tier of the story goes throughout the lenses of Carlos Rivera. The Venezuelan fighter goes and fulfills multiple key roles for the story. First is the reason as to why Joe stops being traumatized. Joe goes for a really noticeable depression that he somehow managed to overcome, but not fully. He goes back to boxing, but he's no longer able to hit people in the side of the head. And it's not until Carlos comes into play that he's able to overcome that fear. It's once he notices that not only Carlos can withstand his punches, but also has enough strength to respond to them and do a lot of damage, then he understands that it was not truly his fault, and he is the spark that he needed to reignite his career. Carlos Rivera ends up becoming a very close friend of Joe, and it represents the joyfulness of the youth, the joyfulness of battle, and what is most important, not only being decisive and determined to do something, but accepting the consequences. He is the one that showcases Joe that it's not his fault if he accidentally does something horrible on the ring. Because at the end of the day, they were the ones that decided to be on the ring that day, and it wasn't Joe the one that decided to put them there. He was just doing his job. And the last one, and who is the final boss of the entire show, and the closest thing to a villain, which is the bantamweight champion of the world, Jose Mendoza. Jose Mendoza represents the absolute perfection of boxing, the guy that has everything on his hands. He is not only the best boxer, he is not only someone that has won every single battle with a knockout, he is someone to be a role model. He has a perfect family, a beautiful wife, multiple children that both love him and he loves them, and he never wastes any time. He is the perfect father, despite the fact that he is doing a very dangerous job that, under normal circumstances, would be enough for them to be extremely concerned every single time. But his child and his wife are never scared, because he never gave them a reason to be. Jose Mendoza also showcases a couple of times his true colors, potentially being borderline racist, because he multiple times refers to Joe as that yellow guy, and you know damn well what that means. But outside of that, he also represents the perfect boxer in one regard, which is the respect for others. He multiple times talks about how Joe is a brat and how he is very problematic and annoying, yet he still respects him as a boxer. Every single instance in which he is talking about the boxer Jabuki Joe is with the utmost respect. And that is also true with every other character in the show that faces him. Multiple times he could have gone and make humiliating defeats on its opponents, especially in the WBA versus WBC championship match, but he didn't, and he showed respect to those rivals because they are boxers and he respects every boxer equally. As I said, he is also the closest thing to being a villain in the story, thanks to the fact that he also makes something really bad in the story, even if he doesn't want to do it on purpose. Actually, we are not sure. We know that he probably is sad about it, thanks to what we see about him in other moments. But with what we see in the show is that he probably cares about what he did, even if it's not by a lot. All three of these characters showcase perfect faces of boxing. The guy that is always decided, the guy that brings joy to others, and the guy that is the best and the one to beat. And all of those traits define the final and most important part of the story, Jabuki Joe. Jabuki Joe is one of the most impressive protagonists that I have ever seen. From being a thug and being rejected by multiple orphanages to actually fighting against the world champion. That is the showcase of the true fighter that Jabuki Joe is, not only as a boxer, but in its spirit. Joe represents everything of what a sportsman is. Not only a guy that has extreme talent, but someone that at some point decided to go all in and do everything that he could to actually become the best version of itself. Someone that was also in a very poor condition. He was in poverty. He was an orphan in the Japan of the 60s. He had nowhere to go, and that's why he ends in the slums of a random street of Tokyo that is actually not even good. He finds in that place his home, and he goes and gives that home everything he can and becomes the pride of that place called the Bridge of Tears. He might be impulsive, he might be reckless, he might be dumb at times, but he's someone that is determined to help others, even if at first glance doesn't look like it. He is someone with insane talent, but that doesn't bring him immediate success. He needs to train hard. He fails multiple times, he loses multiple battles, not because of the talent he is just gonna succeed all of a sudden, no. He has to pass through a lot, which is a very big representation of not only sports, but life as a whole. You might suffer a lot, but you cannot give up. You need to go forward. You need to prove to yourself that you can do it. And he does it every single time. Even if he knows that the fight seems impossible, even if he knows that there's nothing after that, even if he knows that it might be just futile, he might not even want that. In fact, he doesn't ever fully want the world champion title. He just wants to defeat Jose Mendoza. But there's the thing, he has to keep moving forward. He cannot stop down for even a second, because he knows what happens if he stops doing that. He has seen it throughout his entire life, and he has seen it with the people that lives in the slums that he lives. Joe is the character that represents hope, not only for the story in which he is in, but rather hope for Japan. As I said, he is someone that was created in a difficult time for Japan, yet he managed to become a full-on icon, a symbol of hope for the people of Japan. He is the hero of the people that is struggling, both in story and in real life. He is the showcase that if you push hard enough, you can reach new heights and new limits. And that's why Jabuki Joe and Ashita no Joe are the pride of Japan. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you all enjoyed it. If you want more content like this, please leave a like, comment and subscribe. It helps the channel to grow, and it helps you to make me realize what do you like. And if you do not understand what I just said, don't worry, me neither. And without anything else to explain, see you next time. Bye bye.